I'm Tom Tryon, the opinion editor of the Herald-Tribune, and so welcome everybody to our 23rd Hot Topics Forum. We're calling this one Lost Lives, Warriors and Families Rise Up. Now the impetus for this event is a Herald-Tribune special section reported by my colleague Billy Cox, who you'll meet in a moment. Billy's the senior features reporter in the newsroom. The section was printed on August 12th. We've got copies in the back, and it remains online at heraldtribune.com and rxforveterans.com. So let me just do a little housekeeping real quick. Our host for the night is the Sarasota Orchestra, so when you have a chance, please thank this community-spirited organization and its employees for hosting us. Tonight's event is being videotaped by the Manatee Educational Television Consortium, and it will be available tomorrow on its YouTube channel, metvweb.com. I also need to thank my colleagues at the Herald-Tribune who've done the work for making this happen, Carrie and her team. I want to give special recognition to Lee Williams, Billy's editor on this project, and want to have our executive editor, who will soon be the general manager of the Herald-Tribune, Matt Sauer, stand up and wave real quick. Congratulate Matt on his... Let me give you just a quick outline. We'll start with a conversation with Billy about how the section came about, the stories he heard, and what he learned. We'll follow with a panel discussion involving folks with firsthand experience in these and other issues, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. If you want to ask a question, you can just come up, and this microphone will be hot, and you can pose your question. The only thing is we ask people really not to engage in too much preaching. I'm going to get my sermon on Sunday, I like to say. So if you can, just get to the question as quickly as you can. And we'll end at 7 o'clock. So to get started, let me introduce my colleague, Billy Cox. Billy, come on up. Yeah, well. Billy's been with the Herald-Tribune since September of 2006, and I can tell you has produced some of the Herald-Tribune's most compelling stories. He was raised in North Carolina and somehow ended up at the University of South Carolina, where he earned a bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism. In 1988, he won the American Legion's Fourth Estate Award for coverage of what he calls atomic veterans. So everybody, please welcome Billy Cox.
Does this work? Okay.
It works. You
I can sit
have
down.
A seat.
Okay, thanks.
Sit a spell, as they would tell you.
Well, I'm really glad to see all you folks here tonight. Thanks for coming out. Got some weather issues out there, but it's good to see you. And I hope this will be an educational evening for you guys. It certainly was. Oh, is that better? Is that better? Okay. This was a real learning curve for me. I thought I knew a lot about marijuana going to college in the 1970s, and you know how those things tend to turn out. So I thought I was an expert, but I had no idea just how much science was involved. Of course, back in the 1970s, when marijuana was classified as a Schedule I drug, more dangerous than cocaine and as dangerous as heroin, we didn't even know anything about endocannabinoids or cannabinoid receptors. I mean, this was just an alien concept. It didn't exist. But the more we got the science, the more I started looking into it, the more I started looking at our history with marijuana, this nation. You go back a century. My eyes were opened, and it was, as I got into the weeds and started talking with veterans, I became convinced that what we have is not only a fraudulent policy, but it's immoral. And so that's what we're up against, and our policy has been fraudulent since at least 1971, when the Journal of American Medicine Association came out with its first report about the medicinal benefits of marijuana on glaucoma patients. So it was, I don't often have an opportunity to do a whole lot of this kind of reporting. That's why I'm really grateful that we had the chance to do something like this. And I hope it paid off, because this was an advocacy project for us. What we want to do is get rid of this Schedule I label on marijuana. Anybody who thinks marijuana is as dangerous as heroin or more dangerous than cocaine, they're living in an alternate universe. So this was a revelation for me, and fortunately I was able to get some incredible comments from people who open up sad stories. You'll be hearing probably a few tonight. We have some people here who we'll be introducing to you later, but this story, I think, hopefully, I'd like to think it's capable of changing national policy. I'm not all that cynical yet about our ability to change things, and we'll just have to see what happens. The key thing is contacting our elected representatives and to circulate this project. Certainly, what I've done is not the only thing that's out there. There's lots of science, lots of good journalism that's been done about it, but certainly I think this is as comprehensive as we could get. And it's going to take probably a lot of work from folks like you guys to help put legs on this project.
You know, you can speak your mind tonight. Feel free to go ahead. So tell me a little bit about the genesis of this project, this section. How did it come about?
Well, actually, my editor, Lee Williams, back there in the back, he is a veteran, and certainly we had both heard stories about marijuana's medicinal benefits. But then, you know, he said, look into it, and as we began to look into the statistics, oh my God, the VA, its own database from 2005 to 2015, more than 75,000 veterans or those still on active duty have taken their lives. Now, how did that happen? How is that acceptable? So, you know, it's irresistible when you get figures like that, and you see that at least 20 a day. Those figures are a bit in dispute. Nobody disputes it. It's at least 20 veterans or those with military still in uniform are killing themselves every day, and of those figures, 3.8 of those are still in uniform. How is this acceptable? I mean, we put these guys in harm's way, and then we treat them with half measures of opioids, which are addictive and dangerous. And of course, even the DEA's own website has yet to record the first fatality from marijuana. So this is an immoral restraint that we have on marijuana today, and every day that we delay leaving Schedule I intact, we lose 20 more people that we might be able to save.
So tell us a little bit about how you reported this. I mean, just some of the basic steps, where you started,
well,
and where it took you.
I'll tell you, this is a story I probably couldn't have done to this degree 30 years ago. I mean, it's as easy as Google. You Google veterans, marijuana, PTSD, and the things that pop up. These veterans groups, these ad hoc nonprofits that have been really springing up, I would say, over the last 5 years anyway. And you go from one to the other, and there are varying levels of enthusiasm for being interviewed. But fortunately, the folks that I did contact, they felt a sense of duty, and frankly, it came to a culmination in the reporting when there was a rally, a Memorial Day weekend rally in Washington, D.C., where there were a number of people who showed up, and the most powerful element of that, to me, was a wall. It was called the Lutz Memorial Wall, and Janine is here, and she'll tell you all about that in a little bit. But it had the faces, the portraits of 369 veterans, most of them young, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And the 369, according to the math, you play it out, that's about, I would say, 100 feet spread from end to end. And you look at this and you realize this is only about 16 days worth of suicides, and military suicides in this country. And nothing really drove this home to me more than this graphic tool that Janine has put together. And you look at these faces and you look, they're so young and they've got so much in front of them, or you would hope, but they don't. And so that to me was a real clincher, that I knew I had this incredible story, and that's what we worked on, and that's what you have access to now. So I hope everybody will try to get the word out to their elected representatives that we need we're in a crisis right now.
So in addition to the issue of Schedule 1 for marijuana, what were your several major other takeaways from reporting on this, whether personal, emotional experiences or facts or stories or what?
Well, one of the things, I think there's enough paranoia and enough conspiracies out there circulating around to last for a long, long time in this country, and I really didn't want to go there in terms of, who's backing up the anti-marijuana forces, the alcohol industry, the big pharma, all that kind of stuff. That information is out there. That was not something that I wanted to personally address, because I wanted to tell the human story of the suffering of these folks, what they've been through, or their survivors. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like I'm a parent, and I can't imagine what it would be like to lose a child who might have been saved if they had just had a decent, humane option other than prescription opioids that I'm told, VA dispenses like candy. I mean, I don't know what we're so afraid of with a plant. Hopefully we'll get into some of those issues tonight. But I think the idea was with putting a human face, talking with people, going to this rally in Washington, and hearing the stories of those who've lost kids or their brothers in arms. I don't know how anybody can listen to these stories, especially if you're a politician, and be unaffected by that. I just don't know how you can walk away and pretend like it's just another anecdotal. Well, we've got science too. We've got a lot of science. We need more research done, but we've got enough science out there to know that this stuff isn't nearly as dangerous as cocaine or heroin. So
in our conversations, you mentioned that there are a significant number of bills out there, legislation filed in Congress. There's H.R. 2020, filed by Matt Gaetz of Florida, a conservative Republican. Then you reported on a bill filed by Bill Nelson.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, I actually ran into Bill Nelson today. The senator was at Moat Marine Lab taking a tour. They are looking at the red tide and all of those issues, how to mitigate that. So I caught up with him briefly, just for a couple of seconds. Of course, he had not had a chance to read the report that we'd done, but this was, what was the name of this act? Anyway, it's not bipartisan. He got another senator from Hawaii to sign in on this, and basically what it would do is give the Veteran Administration, Department of Veterans Affairs, it would give them license to write prescriptions for veterans for medical marijuana in states. There's 31 now where medical weed is legal. And I pulled him aside for just a second, and I said, I know you're busy, but could you I gave his PR person some copies of the article that we wrote. And I said, if you could take a look at this, and I'd love to circle back a little bit later, and he said he'd be glad to. And I said, what you're proposing is great, but it's really kind of a half measure. The veterans I've talked to, they all want Schedule I off of there. And he says, do you have any idea how difficult it is to get anything done with marijuana in our Congress today? In fact, there are over 60 pieces of legislation today in committees that could mitigate some of the draconian laws, but none of them directly address getting marijuana off Schedule I head on. That seems to be radioactive for whatever reason. And again, I I don't want to be melodramatic, but I think that's obscene. What are we afraid of? So anyway.
All right. One of the questions I asked you, and we'll get the folks from the panel up in a minute, and we may be able to address this as well, but one question I had was, isn't Florida's medical marijuana access law good enough? What was, doesn't that provide enough relief or the necessary relief and access? Did you go down that road?
Not terribly deeply, because I know that it does not pertain to active duty military personnel. Those are the people who we need to also reach, even if Nelson's proposal becomes a law. And I think it's good. It's better than nothing, but it still doesn't address the ones who are still on active duty and who may need it just as badly. We had a situation. There's a veteran that we all know who was in the Navy, and he's disabled, and for the last X number of years that he was on duty, he had to suffer through opioid regimen. I think he said he was on something like 20-some pills the last time we talked with him, and he knew, based on his conversations with some of his fellow veterans who had left the service, and they were getting benefits from marijuana, he knew that it worked. It worked for them anyway. It's not guaranteed to say that it works for everybody or will work for everybody, but it worked for them. And he served his country honorably, and he has a right to try this, but he knew he couldn't. So what he did, he's just been discharged honorably, and he is slowly trying to detox, trying to wean himself off of these dangerous prescription drugs. Why is that necessary? Why do we need for our guys who served our country honorably to have to go through this hellish sort of withdrawal syndrome? Again, I don't see any sense in that.
And for the non-vets in the room, why couldn't he have used the marijuana?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the veterans or the
No, the active duty.
Active duty. Well, of course, it's a federal one. It's a Schedule I drug, which is federal law, and our military is guided not by state law but by federal law. And it's still one of these. It's a felony. So you get caught, you do the urinalysis test, you get popped for that, and you can be run out. I talked to a number of guys who got busted in rank, who were given general or less than honorable discharges. One guy almost lost his shoulder in Fallujah, and when he is recovering, he's in rehab, and he basically didn't make any secret of hey guys, I'm smoking marijuana. It works better than the stuff you're giving me. And of course that was totally unacceptable. And next thing you know, he's busted from lance corporal to private, and he has got papers going up to out from battalion of the general saying we need to get him out of the military. So really, and fortunately a general intervened and said he's been through enough. Just forget this. So, but he still lost his rank.
All right, so last question for you. How much time did you spend on this? How long did it take you?
Altogether, probably about 6 months, I guess. I had some real luxury of time with this project. It's something that you need time to do, and fortunately, management helped give me that kind of space that needed to be doing.
Exactly. I'm sure there's some people watching that would want to know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, sure. Yeah. This is the project. What's tell the name?
Yeah, well, this is Rally for the Dead, and we'll explain that later about what this wall is all about. But if you look it up, it's going to be under Warriors Rise Up. And it's about the veterans who've had enough of Schedule I and being victimized, having their careers ruined, their military careers, and having to feel like they leave a double life by smoking marijuana, something that helps them, and something that makes them feel like they are criminals breaking the law.
Yeah.
That would be in the Sarasota Herald-Tribune.
You know, the Herald-Tribune, it's at heraldtribune.com and also at rx4veterans.com. So either place. Thank you for that product placement. So anything else you want to finish with before we bring our folks up?
Yeah, I think they're the ones who really need to tell their stories.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is have very short introductions, less than a sentence, because what they're going to tell you is more important than what I would tell you about them. So if y'all could just come up, I'd suggest taking the stairs. Billy didn't do too well trying to navigate hopping up. He had a good landing. Okay, so first to our panel, thank you for being here. We appreciate it greatly, and particularly your willingness to share your very personal stories. The first, and I don't need to go left to right, I think you can figure out who Janine Lutz is. Janine is here from Fort Lauderdale. Did you drive the bus? Did you drive your
RV? No.
She's got a 30-foot RV, and that's well decorated, and she'll tell you a story. Bob Jordan is right to Billy's left. Bob and his wife live in Parrish, and on the far end is Sam Schneider, who is a CBD retailer, and we'll get into that more. Let's start with Janine, and I'll just give you a reminder. You can pick up those mics out of the cradle if you like, but whatever the case, if you could just hold it close to your mouth. Okay? Janine, simple question. Tell us your story and why you're here.
Well, the story starts with my son, who served on the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan. He was a United States Marine, an 03-51 assaultman. He came home, and he was diagnosed with severe PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And the VA's protocol for that was to give him a dangerous cocktail of drugs. My son hallucinated. He wasn't sleeping. The drugs were making him gain weight. And in June of 2010, he was at Camp Lejeune. They gave him a drug called Klonopin, which is a benzodiazepine, and a week later, he attempted suicide. The doctor wrote in his chart, "Do not give Mr. Lutz benzos," because he knew that was the reason my son attempted suicide. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. And but they never told my son, leaving him to believe that he wanted to take his life with his own free will. 3 months later, my son went into Poplar Springs, Virginia, inpatient care for PTSD. That doctor put on Klonopin, didn't bother to read my son's chart. And in 3 days, my son told the doctor he wanted to kill himself again. But you see, he told the doctor because my son truly did not want to kill himself. The doctor stopped administering it. Let's fast forward to November 2011. Johnny was medically retired from the Marine Corps. He came home, and at that time, he was on about 18 different medications. And the spring of 2012, he said to me, "Mom, I want to get off all these drugs." My son was basically a zombie, didn't leave the house much. And I said, "Good, honey." And he got off all the drugs except for a low dose of morphine. He cracked his back and injured his knee in Afghanistan. And that summer, we traveled to Colorado, we went whitewater rafting, we traveled to Tennessee, visited family and went whitewater rafting there. We had a fantastic summer. There was joy in our household again. The end of the summer, however, my son became triggered and he became depressed. And on January 1st, 2013, my son called me at 10:30 at night. We were in the same house, and he said, "Mom, I need you to take my pain pills." And he goes, "I need you to lock up all the guns in the house." And I said, "Okay, honey." And so we locked up all the guns, and I sat with him on his bed, and he was crying. And he said, "Mom, I'm scared," because my son was depressed, and he was scared that he was going to have those suicidal ideations again. Well, unbeknownst to me, on January 4th, he went to the VA on Commercial Boulevard, and his medical records read, "Mr. Lutz presents well-groomed and teary-eyed. He stated that he had his mom lock up his guns and she's controlling his pain meds." And as the tears run down his face, the doctor says, "Well, how are you doing now, Mr. Lutz?" And he says, "I'm fine." "Okay, well, let's try you on Klonopin." Next, he went to the doctor next door, and that doctor gave him 90 tablets of morphine and increased the dosage by 65%. 8 days later, my son was dead. And if the doctor would have just taken the time to pick up the phone or to call me or do something, but they chose not to do that. And also, I do believe with all that I am, if that day, if cannabis was available, and they were to give that to my son for his anxiety, my son, John Lutz, would be alive today.
Well, what happened next? After grief?
Grief is a lifetime,
Yeah.
but
I'm sorry, you're
no,
right.
it's okay. You don't have to be sorry. It was about 5 months later, I woke up and I was mad as HELL. And I said, why didn't another mother open her mouth? Why didn't somebody tell me? I didn't know about the suicide epidemic. I didn't know. I didn't have any tools in my toolbox for PTSD. I didn't know about the dangers of these psychotropic drugs. I didn't know how the VA was giving these drugs and knowing that their own protocol for treating our veterans is failing by a report that's published on their website since 2010. And it was that day that I decided that I was going to be the voice and I was going to fight for those who fought for us. And I started the Let's Live to Tell Foundation. And I started at the 1-year anniversary of my son's death, I had a motorcycle ride to raise awareness, and that's when I started collecting photos and laminating them. And I had about 50 that day up on the wall. And I couldn't believe people came from hundreds of miles to see their child's photo. And people stood in front of that and just sobbing. And I saw how impactful it was when you put a face to the name and you see these young, youthful faces that thought all hope was gone. And so I continued that wall, and today I have 384 photos on it. And I can tell you also, I sued the VA. I got an attorney to get my son's records, and the first thing I did was look at those times, and I saw, that's how I know that the doctor never told my son. And I said, that's not right. And then I found a report on the VA's website that said, you don't treat PTSD with benzodiazepines because it causes suicide, but they're doing it. My son died of pharmaceutically induced suicide. I sued the US government for wrongful death of my son, and we settled that case November of 2011. It was settled out of court. There wasn't a lot of money, but that's not the point. The point is that I know without a shadow of a doubt that the VA is killing our kids by pharmaceutically induced suicide with these psychotropic, dangerous drugs. And if cannabis was available, so many lives would be here today.
So tell us why you believe that's so. What in cannabis do you think would make the difference from your perspective and from your experience?
So at that time, when my son was alive, I didn't know anything about cannabis. I mean, you know, I just didn't. And then I started a social club. What I do is I build local community for military and first responders. And I'm into my 5th year in Fort Lauderdale, Florida with this social club. I have now over 500 members. And I'm listening to them, and they're telling me that they're smoking cannabis. They're not taking any drugs. And these are guys that I have one guy, he's a serial entrepreneur, I call him. He starts businesses, he's very successful, and you would never know that he smoked. And there's so many in my group that do, and you just would never know. And I said, wow, it's really working for you, really? And they're like, Janine, my life has changed. And their wives are telling me. My husband is just, I got my husband back. And I just kept hearing this over and over and over. And I said, and I listened, you know, because I listened to my veterans and to that population and what they need. And so that's when I started doing my own research. On the weekends, all you see on my TV is YouTube. I'm researching cannabis and all the great benefits of it and listening to doctors. And not just word on the street, but I'm listening to Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who now is a cannabis proponent. And he is sorry for misleading the American people. And I don't know what the delay is.
Tell us your website one more time.
My website is Lutz, L-U-T-Z, livetotell.org.
Okay, thank you. So I tell you what, let's shift to Sam Schneider, since we're on kind of the topic of the efficacy of cannabis. So let's start with this. What do you do for a living?
Thank you for coming, first of all. I have a shop called Rocket Man. It's an alternative lifestyle shop. Over the last probably 6 months, we introduced legal CBD to help gap the difference between the legislation, I would say, versus what's happening in the field in reality. The CBD is a part of the marijuana plant. It is not the whole plant. I have to emphasize that because it is genetically modified to be legal with very low THC values, very high CBD, but it is not a whole plant by far. It helps a lot in a lot of different fields. Personally, me, as an ex-military, I find it very helpful as well. My colleagues that use it, they have very, very good success with it. And we try to help as many people as possible. Try to get some relief if it's in pain, PTSD, if it's seizures. We have people walking in on crutches and walking out with the crutches under their arms. We have it taped on video. It's quite amazing to see these transformations happen within 10 minutes. I think it is a really bad decision not to re-legalize marijuana and the plant itself and its benefits.
So can anybody, I assume you have to be an adult to enter the store or no?
Okay.
Or and buy, yeah.
Okay, CBD products are derived from the industrial plant of hemp. It has to be grown in an industrial environment. It can't be done in your backyard. You can't grow your own plants legally. You have to have an industrial license for it. Anybody can walk into the shop. There's no age limit on walking into the shop. We do not serve anyone under 24 due to the research that we have found. Now, that said, it doesn't mean that parents aren't treating their kids for ADD, HDD, all the different Asperger's, epileptic seizures. We have tens and tens of examples of parents that have been self-treating their kids under their own liability, I would say. We are a commercial entity. We have to be very careful. We tread very carefully not to cross that line of legality. That said, Billy was at the shop when one of the mothers came in one day and firsthand gave him her experience and how the CBD saved her daughter from having several seizures a day to now she's down to maybe 1 or 2 a month without taking any additional medication. I have people that have that couldn't sleep. I have a colleague of mine. He was an 8-year Ranger in the Army. Did 2 tours in Iraq, 2 tours in Afghanistan. He could not get to sleep at night. He now sleeps. He gets 6 solid hours of sleep a night. There's many, many, many examples. The education that I've been accumulating is all self-research. Books that we carry gives a little bit of input on it. There's a lot of online material out there. I do have access to the MedPub. There's very little research in the federal archives, not enough. Simple things. It stops osteoporosis for anybody who has bone density loss or anybody who has to recover from bone fractures. Nothing works better than CBD, cannabinoids, or THC, depending on the different cases. CBD is not an answer for everything. It does not treat everything. The whole plant is much preferred, but at this point in time, it is an alternative on the way to getting this off Schedule 1. I agree.
Can we wait to the end? Yeah, close to the end. Thank you. So just give us an idea of practically of the product. So what would you take for sleeping? What would you take for pain? What would you take for PTSD?
We have almost 30 to 50 different types of CBD ways to taking it. From the bare organic plant, if somebody wants to vape it or smoke it. We have it as cartridges for vaping, pills, syrups, nasal spray, drops under the tongue, gummy bears, isolates, water-infused, Coke, lemonade, you name it, we got it. I mean, it's a commercial entity at the end of the day. But the idea is finding the right dosage for what you're trying to treat. And that is the tricky part, and that is one thing that has no research enough on it. It's really, you learn to self-medicate yourself, trial and error. We started with very low dosages, and over the last 6 months we found out that, well, no, you really need to hit a little bit more than what we've been dishing out. And I have a really good panel of experiment people, I call them, that they're willing to feed back to us and tell us, hey, and one of them is, remind me his name, Ramesh?
Yes.
Ramesh, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the people that were talked about. He rolled in, and literally he's on a wheelchair, so he rolled into my shop one day, and we had a very long conversation. He took some CBD with him, and then we followed up with it again, and now he's on his 3rd round, and he's nailed it down to a point where he says, I never thought I'll be able to get off Oxy. And that is, for me, the biggest present you could possibly get as a retailer, because we are for profit at the end of the day. But we are in for profit and we're helping people. It's a win-win. I spent many years in the military. I grew up in Israel, where the research is so much more advanced than here when it comes to the dealing with PTSD. I have really hope that more people will attempt to help themselves get a good night's sleep, get out of pain, get out of anxiety. It's according to the researchers, probably the most powerful anti-inflammatory in the nature that we have, and it costs nothing to make when it goes big. And I think we said that in the article. What's cost now $79, $80 will be $7.99, just like all the vitamins, dropped down since the 70s. It's unbelievable. It just needs a voice. It needs a voice. It needs to get out there. People need to get educated, and you guys coming out here today it just shows that there is interest and people are aware that there is change happening, and we're going to be part of it. And we're pushing as hard as we can within our legal limits, and I always say that, to make people feel better without getting addicted to anything. This is one thing that has been proven. It is the CBD is a non-addictive 100%. THC, there's research to here, research to there. I've read about addiction, but it doesn't even compare to addiction to oxy, for instance, or heroin, or morphine. It's not as addictive as nicotine, which everybody is vaping now with those Juuls. That's a terrible thing. That's it.
Right. So just tell us, if you can wrap up with this. It's my understanding there's a significant difference between the approach taken in the United States and the approach taken in Israel, where you served in the military. Could you just talk briefly about that, please?
Yeah. In Israel, the access to marijuana and the legal leniency of the establishment, it's still illegal, by the way, to smoke marijuana on the street in Israel. Don't think it's Amsterdam. It is not Amsterdam. Also in Amsterdam, you can't smoke on the street. You have to be in a coffee shop. But that said, it's a small country. It's a lot easier to get things done. And it has helped my family. I have brothers that live there. I have friends that were in the military as well. I have friends that were not even necessarily just a car accident even, you get trauma from. It works. You can work. You can be productive. And you can rejoin society without having your flashbacks, I call it.
And the research? There's more research?
Yeah, Israel, I did meet up a few years ago with a lady that is right here in the U.S. She's a Air Force doctor, and she specializes in pilots, PTSD, that are still in active duty. And I asked her also the same question, where did you get your research from? She says, we all train in Israel. PTSD is like state-of-the-art is done in Israel, and there is a lot of research because everybody in the country goes to the Army, so everybody's a subject.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Mr. Jordan, thanks for your patience. So you've got two stories to tell, or so I'm told, so I understand. One is your own, and one is your wife's. And I guess there's maybe a third story, the story of you and your wife. So, want to start with your wife?
Well, my name is Bob Jordan, a Vietnam veteran. My wife, Kathy Jordan, has ALS, and she's had it for, I think, over 30-some years now. It's strange, and the way this came about. We moved down here from Delaware years and years ago, 91, but before that she came down, and what she did, she came down to save up her muscle relaxers. Ironically enough, it was Klonopin, and the doctor had her on that, so got her out of the cold weather, came down with some friends, not telling me. She turned around and was going to save up her muscle relaxers, wouldn't need as many, and then when she came home, to go to sleep and not wake up. While she was down here, they went out on Coquina Beach and they smoked a form of cannabis, which was around then. The federal government has eradicated it, but it was called Mayaca Gold. A good friend of mine, Donnie Clark, grew it, and he got life in prison for growing, and Kathy got life. So we're friends, we're really close friends, and so I call them the odd couple. She got life to live, and he got life in prison. Bill Clinton commuted his sentence, did not pardon him because he's still a felon. And when she came home, and she told me that she had found the medicine that stopped her disease, and I picked her up to Philadelphia Airport, and she had a vial of pot between her boobs. I said, get this. I said, what do you got? He said, get this out of here. And holy Christ, you're smuggling dope. What are you doing? We're all going to go to jail. Jesus Christ, woman. And she said, this is my medicine. And I said, I thought in my mind, if you ever seen ALS, she's grasping at straws, you know. And I thought, I'll be a good husband, and I'll say, okay, if that's what you want to do. And then she actually started getting better. Her speech cleared up, we walked better, and I said, holy Christ, we got something here. So, make a long story short, we ended up coming down to Florida. 1991, we went to Bradenton Neurology, and she had put in her medical records that she uses 1.5 Klonopin a night. That's the only pharmaceuticals that she takes, and 2 marijuana cigarettes. And I said, what do you, don't put that down there. They're going to lock us up. Now, you got to remember, this was a big bust. This wasn't, I mean, that's the time when they would bust you for one joint, and then if you had a pipe, they'd scrape the resin out and charge you for that. I mean, people are doing some really time for that. So she went to ALS Association. Long story short, there was a lady, a doctor there, that told her that if there was ever a cure, then what would happen was that she wouldn't get it because of her use of illegal drugs. And she said, is that right? And she said, yeah. She said, to hell with you. And she became an activist on February 22nd, and George Washington's birthday, up in, she spoke publicly, and we started coming out publicly because when they came out to the causeway, they took a picture of us, and your paper came to the story on us, and they're 20 years apart. They're 20 years apart, and we're saying the same thing. So we've been public, and then what happened was I've been growing for a long time for her, and we got busted. And once we got busted, the sheriffs got us. As a matter of fact, Kathy had the Kathy Jordan medical cannabis bill in the House and in the Senate. The only time it's ever been done. And Jeff Clemens and Katie Edwards were sponsoring it. They named the bill after Kathy, and the next day our house got raided. And I'm thinking, are these guys that smart, or is this just a fluke? You know. So once they raided the house, and boy, they raised a ruckus on that. I'm not going to get into that. I wasn't very polite about that to the police, and they weren't very polite to me. But then John Morgan got involved. He heard about it, and the newspaper came and talked to us. And said, well, what do you think about John Morgan? I said, John ain't come lately. You know, he ain't never done nothing for cannabis. And I've got told, don't say that. You know, you're not supposed to say that. But lo and behold, then he got really involved. And if you ask John Morgan, he'll tell you it's because of Kathy Jordan. And then we got involved. We had Amendment 2. It failed the first time. I think we made 58%. And then this last time, it's almost, 72 or 73% almost. You know, so the people want this. And I'm going to tell you what. Your story pisses me off. I'm mad as hell, and I ain't taking this no more. You know, you're sitting here and see this when I'm getting off track. But anyway, so we got raided, and then the amendment passed. But the problem as I see it, that this is what I don't understand. Okay, the endocannabinoid system we knew about. We met Mishula from Israel in 2004. And he told us about the endocannabinoid system. Raphael Mishul in Israel is the grandfather of the THC. He's the one that separated that and the endocannabinoid system and CBD and CBD1 and CBD. There's so many chemicals or parts of this plant that it's amazing. I think it's the best plant on the planet, and it's also the safest. So we just keep doing our thing and keep putting one foot in the other, but you know, like I said, I'm mad as hell, and we don't take it no more. We're public. I don't hide our use. So what happened was after they arrested me, well, they didn't arrest me, they charged me, and then they said they wanted to be pretrial diversion, and I said, what's that? Say, good boy for a year, don't say nothing, and drug testing through the whole time, so you're not using cannabis. and at the end of the year, we'll let you off the hook. And I said, am I entitled to a jury trial? And they said, yeah. I said, I want a jury trial. And your defense is what? We've got your plants. We got 23 plants. We got you red-handed. You don't need a jury trial. So they were mad about that. And then they came back about a month later, and they started calling me Bob then instead of Mr. Jordan. Hey, Bob, look, what we can do is just shut up, be a good boy, and at the end of the year, we'll let you off the hook. You get it? Nod, wink, wink, you know? And I said, no. Oh, man. They want to put me in jail real fast. But what happened was we were in Tallahassee lobbying, and when we were in Tallahassee lobbying, a reporter from Bradenton Herald called us at how's the field to reach medical necessity. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, the sheriff's office sent us a letter that you reach medical necessity. 1, you cannot bring the disease upon yourself. 2, you have to exhaust all other means. And 3, the harm you're trying to overcome is more heinous than breaking the law itself. And Kathy qualified for all of them. So we got medical necessity. So they said Robert Jordan can cultivate a small amount of cannabis solely for his wife purposes. And I said, small, huh? And they said, yeah, small. So I said, the state of Delaware is small, so I filled the backyard of a pot. I mean, what are you going to do? So, but we've been going this journey. We've been working almost 25 years now. And it's amazing to have something like this right here with you people here and all this, because as little as 10 years ago, you couldn't have had it. You know, it was still a big buzz back then. And if anybody says, well, how did you do it for so many years? Me and Kathy never quit on the same day. What we did is she quit, and then I'd say, no, hon, come on. And then I'd say, I ain't taking this no more. I ain't doing this stuff no more. We got too many insults. And she'd say, no, come on, let's do it another month. And well, thank you for that. I don't know about that hero stuff. I'm just a guy keeping his wife alive. Well, then to get to I've also got PTSD. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and what really upsets me about you guys' story, it's 50 years. 50 years between our conflicts, and your story is just like mine. You know what I mean? There's 58,000 names on that wall up in Washington, D.C., and twice that many committed suicide. You know what I mean? Our signature move, or my war, our signature move was to get home. You just didn't fit in. You did a lot of drugs, and you'd barricade yourself in the house and take hostage, and then suicide by cop. They're saying it's 22 a day. I think it's higher than that because they don't consider a drug overdose as a suicide. So this suicide thing is, there's a guy in New Jersey that my friend Nick went up and seen, went to his funeral. He set himself on fire. He burned himself to death in front of a VA. Another guy in Philadelphia jumped off a building. It's time to do something. You show me one other medication, one that's got these restrictions on it. There is nothing else. You can take all the Oxycontin and fentanyl and Xanax and everything else you want with no restriction, but you smoke a pot, and it's the world's worst crime. And yet it helps the most. This whole thing, if you know the history of this, the whole thing is based in racism. Racism and greed. By what was his name? Hearst and then Anslinger got together and did the Reefer Madness. As a matter of fact, we just went to a show down here. It's a comedy today, but when Reefer Madness first came out, it was real. You know, you smoke pot, you're going to commit axe murders, you're going to jump out of windows and all this stuff. And this great lie, what encourages me today is this great lie is dying a slow, painful death by 10,000 cuts. People all across the country are seeing the truth. They're mad as hell and they ain't taking it no more. And it helps me. I use the legal thing. Kathy cannot use the vape pens. It got like a metallic taste to it. So with John Morgan, filed a lawsuit against the state for flour. You can get all different types of cannabis, but you can't get any flour.
You can't get cannabis.
Huh?
You get everything but cannabis.
Yeah, well, you can't. Yeah, you can't. You get derivatives, but you can't get the whole plant. So what happened is, John Morgan filed a lawsuit, and we won all 3 of our cases. The last one we won, the judge Givers, I think her name, said that the the law against that is unconstitutional. It says in the Constitution you can't smoke in public, but therefore you can smoke in private. Ask 10 people how you use medical marijuana, none of them say you smoke it. So it's right out in front, and they're stopping, and they're stalling, and I think they're killing people, flat out. And then the other thing, the Vietnam thing, I've always been with Kathy. I'm right behind her. Anybody asks, I'm with Kathy. I don't talk about myself much. This is kind of unusual for me because I'm standing out here as a veteran with PTSD that uses cannabis. I've been doing it for years. And I look back, I was in Vietnam 1968, 1969. I was with the AmeriCal, 1st or 6th Light Infantry. I was on what they call a forward fire base. And I'm no war hero. I had it better than some and worse than others. We get overrun, we get I've seen more shit than I wanted to, I guarantee you that. And so I got home, I did my thing there, and the whole time in Vietnam we smoked a lot of weed. And really looking back on it, we were medicating ourselves, and we didn't know it. We were just getting high, you know what I mean? Just, man, hey, let's smoke a joint and calm down. So so all these years later, we come to find out now what we're doing, what we did was medicating ourselves. So you get home, and you turn around, and I want to put it behind me. I got home, and now you're talking back in '69, hippies and love and peace and all that stuff. And you get home, and, hey, Jordan, where you been? I haven't seen you for a while. Well, I was in Nam. What'd you go there for, you idiot? Now I got two choices. I'm either going to choke this person, or I'm going to stuff it. After what I had seen, you know what I mean? So I started stuffing it and stuffing it. And I had no idea that I had PTSD. So, but I was in a bad mood. I was in a real bad mood constantly. I'd much rather rip your goddamn throat out than talk to you, excuse me, but that's the way I felt. And I just, I have a few close friends, and that would be it. Anybody outside my circle was the enemy. And to this day, I'm sitting here talking, looking at the audience, and I can see both of them walls. Because, and not knowing it, they call it hypersensitive or hyper alert or something like that. That never leaves. And as time went on, and I'm also in recovery. I got hooked on the pills that the VA gave me. I went to the VA. They said, matter of fact, they didn't want to say I had PTSD. But once they did, then the floodgates opened. I had Klonopin and Xanax, right up to fentanyl, hydrocodone, and fentanyl patches coming to my house. I overdosed 3 times and I died once. And when you're in that, you can't see it. It's more and more and more and more and more. And thank God I survived. I got up to the VA and they had to bring me back, and they were asking my son, well, how in the hell did you get all this morphine from? My son said, you gave it to him. I got it from the VA, and then I just went to sleep. Thank God I survived. But the PTSD thing, it manifests itself. See, I thought you had to see gooks in black pajamas and running around with an AK-47, and you're going around and you're going to choke your old lady. I thought that's what it was, but that's not it. I was into myself, and I didn't trust anybody. And I was always on a hair trigger. And I just thought that was normal. And I did some really crazy stuff I'm not going to get into, and I ended up in jail. And I got out of jail, and I said, man, people don't do this. I've done something wrong here. I better go to the VA and talk to somebody. And I'll never forget the biggest black man I ever seen in my life. He had to duck to get down through the doorway. He said, Jordan, I knew you was coming my way. I heard it on the radio and read it in the newspaper. I knew you was a Vietnam vet. He said, we got to talk, son. I said, I don't know you. I never met you before. And he said, come on, we got to. So we got talking, and he asked me what I did. And one of the things I did when the cops got there, I put my foot on the bumper of the car, and I told my sheriff, let's go. And I was going to try to beat the cops up, but that don't work out real well because they had them stun guns. Back then, they had to touch you with them. I'd fight, and then everything go black, and they handcuffs on, and I'll kick them, and everything go black, and I got shackles on, and I'll bite them, and then I'm hog-tied with handcuffs and stuff.
So has the statute of limitations run out yet? This is being recorded, so I just want to make sure the statutes of limitations
Oh, I didn't
run
kill.
out.
No, I didn't kill anybody.
Okay, all right.
No, no.
so-
But anyhow, it was bad. So then he turned around and damn, made me lose train of thought. But so I talked to this guy, and he said one of the things you did is you put your foot on the bumper of the car and your shirt off and started fighting the cops. I said, yeah. He said, why? I said, I'm a drunken idiot. I don't know why I did it. He said, well, maybe you weren't going to be taken alive. And I said, whoa. It hit me like a ball bat. I said, I've never met this guy before, and how's he going to tell me what I felt in Vietnam? Because they weren't going to take me alive because what they did to you when they got you. And if you died, I'd die getting your body back, and you die getting mine back. And that was just a standard that we had. And come home, and I guess when he said that, I thought, whoa, maybe I better start paying attention to what some people are saying. And I did a lot of therapy, and I found out a lot of things, and it don't go away. It doesn't go away, but there is help if you want to do it. But what they've done is, I've been in a couple of mental institutions with the VA, and what they'll do, they have 4 attendants, 1 for each limb. And also, if you start acting up, they'll medicate you. They'll over-medicate you till you're unconscious, then you're no problem. And it was really free-flowing of the pharmaceuticals to us. And, of course, I took them, but I got hooked, so.
All right, well, we're glad you're here tonight.
Well, I'm glad to be anywhere.
All right, well, great. Well, thank you for your sharing that story, those stories. So we'll kind of go down the road real quick. Start with Sam. What would you like the outcomes to be? Perfect world, if you could change things quickly or slowly, what outcomes would occur?
The ideal situation, sorry. The ideal, everybody can grow his own medicine. That's the ideal. It's free. There's no reason not to. The plant is the easiest plant to grow. Very few pesticides ever attack it. 100% of the plant is used. It is the most environmentally friendly plant there is. Does not use resources, can be regrown on the same soil over and over again without depleting the soil. It's a weed. That's the name of it. It's a weed. It grows easy anywhere. And it could be used for not just medical. It could be used for clothing. It could be replace cotton. It could be we pride ourselves in selling a lot of hemp products, we call it, in the shop. From wallets to clothes to everything, food, seeds, hemp seeds have been available for a long time, not just for parrots. Creams, ointments. I just don't understand how can we legalize something that is so natural.
All right. Janine?
Same question?
Same question.
Should be reclassified. The whole classification of it was based on a lie. It was not based on science. And so when Congress tells us that it's hard to reclassify that, I don't believe that. That's another lie on top of a lie. We've been hoodwinked. America has been hoodwinked by our government. And yeah, I believe that I would like to grow my own in the backyard because personally, I would like to eat the plant raw. I would like to juice it just for optimal health. And of course, I would want the people that need it for medicine, for cancer. I have a little story to tell you real quick. My son had a service dog. His name was Kobe, Hungarian Vizsla. And my niece and nephew took him, and Kobe came down with lung cancer. We treated him with cannabis oil, suppository every 12 hours, and in 3 months, Kobe was cured. Cured. And now the protocol for Kobe is 1 suppository once a week, because if you cure yourself of a disease, you must continue to take cannabis at least once a week for the rest of your life to keep your endocannabinoid system activated.
Bob, perfect outcome, what would it be?
I got a little different take on it. The politicians stop acting like doctors. Let the doctors do their job, and we wouldn't have this problem. You know, I mean, why can a politician tell me that I'm keeping my wife alive by growing a plant in my backyard, and it's illegal, and he's going to put me in jail for keeping my wife alive? It don't make any sense. And the marijuana laws we have now don't make any sense. Absolutely, you got legislatures up there, and believe me, we lobbied in Tallahassee for a good 6 years and talking to people and fighting and trying. And Bradley told me, he said, "Let me tell you something, pal. We're not going to have smoking in Florida." I said, "Let me tell you, pal, I'm going to have smoking in Florida." You know, and we proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Kathy needs to smoke. But as long as you're politicians, the people in power, you know, I go on the assumption the doctor wants to do no harm. He wants to help people. And if they got something that's so amazing, I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, I've helped people, okay, and their cancer went away. Can I say, Kathy's a cancer survivor. She did a massive load of CBD when it first came around. 2 weeks later, her stomach swelled up like she's pregnant. She said, "Hon, I think I'm constipated." I said, "I think you're going to the hospital." Long story short, they opened her up, took a 13-pound tumor out of a little woman in a wheelchair, and the doctor said, the name of the doctor was South. I'll never forget it. She was looking at me, and I've never seen this happen before. That tumor was dead when we took it out. It cut its own blood supply off. There's something, if we can grow something in our backyard, imagine what the scientists could do. If you just free them up. Get it out of the political realm and put it in the medical and the scientific community and let them have it and be free.
Great answer, thanks. Billy, want to take a shot?
One of the things, I kept hearing, a recurring theme when I was talking to a lot of these veterans, is Cheech and Chong. That cultural archetype has been around with us of the stoner since the 1970s. And it was one of these things, nobody wanted to be a stoner. That's why they resisted taking it at first, even at the insistence of some of their friends, even though they had heard that it worked. They didn't want that kind of a label. They didn't want that kind of a stigma. And I remember as I was doing this research about a story that I wrote last year, it was for, I guess it was Veterans Day. There was a young man named Paul Hansen. Paul had gone to Afghanistan. He was brilliant. He had a gift for picking up languages. He could have gone to the school in Monterey, the language school in Monterey, but instead he decided to learn Pashto on his own. Highly motivated, he lived outside the wire because he could communicate with the village elders, and so he was the intermediary between the U.S. forces on base and the elders who had issues. He saw some things over there that he didn't want to talk about, didn't tell his parents, but after he got out of the military, he wanted to study law. He goes to Berkeley, gets a degree. He's working on a degree in political science. He's gotten accepted at law schools at Stanford, Berkeley, UVA, and he's waiting to hear back from Harvard. But as his studies progressed and he's nearing the completion in November of, I think it was 2014, I can't remember, but anyway, the only thing he really complained about to mom and dad was he couldn't sleep. He could not get to sleep. Mom and dad said, "Why don't you try marijuana?" And his dad's a dentist. And he said, "That has helped, but I'm afraid that it's going to distract me from my studies. I'm afraid that it's going to cloud my mind." So he didn't give it that much of a chance. And I was thinking of his words when I talked to certain veterans like Charles Claybaker up in St. Petersburg. He came back from Afghanistan, horribly injured. Same kind of stories. Friends are telling him, "Try some marijuana." "No, I'm not. I don't want to be Cheech and Chong." Well, he tried it, and it worked for him. And it was one of the reasons it helped him focus, actually, on his studies in college. So he was able to get a degree with honors. Another story, another guy who in Illinois, Tyson Manker, and he gets a law degree. This is a guy who got run out of the military because he was caught smoking, and it helped him focus. So it's such a counterintuitive thing. When you think about the archetypes of Cheech and Chong, you don't think, well, it's going to help me improve my performance in class. Well, in at least 2 cases I know of, it actually had that effect. So I couldn't help but think about Paul when I'm listening to these guys' stories, because Paul had undergone so much cultural brainwashing, as so many of us have over the years. He was afraid to try marijuana, even though he knew it helped him sleep, because he didn't want to be able to lose his focus in class. And the story wound up tragically. He wound up taking his life, put a gun in his mouth. I think he was 28 or 29 years old. But again, I think that's one of these fatalities that are preventable, entirely preventable. And, you know, it's not just a medical issue, it's a psychological, cultural issue as well, because we have all been conditioned over the years to think, starting with, you know, reefer madness, that this is the devil's weed. So anyway, I think there's a lot to be done. Even if we were to change the laws tomorrow, I think we'd need a lot more education out there than what we've got now.
All right, thank you. So, yeah, if you would like to ask a question, you could just start to line up at the mic. We have a couple from the floor. You're going to ask yours, Bill? Oh, okay. Okay. Just a couple quick ones from that we had that came in, but we'll wait. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead with get to questions.
Okay, great. Are there any other doctors here? Because I'm the only one. One, very good. Oh, it is on. I won't need it. I'm glad there's another doctor here. A couple, great. Oh, good. Listen, Mr. Jordan, one would think that he and I may have a dispute. Someone grab it. Anyway, believe it or not, Bob Jordan is my friend. I hope I don't HIPAA betray you, Bob, my patient. And that's why I said as I did. Bob, what you guys have to know is the warrior in the state of Florida over the past number of years for medical cannabis. I am proud to be a medical cannabis practitioner here in Sarasota County. My office is down in Venice. The reason I stood up is to make sure that every one of you know that there is a program available now in the state of Florida that can and is helping patients. And because of Bob and his wife Kathy and many other canna warriors in this state, I'm able to practice high quality medical cannabis medicine in the state of Florida. What I do every day are the stories that you heard from the positive side here. And my dear, I'm so sorry about the loss of your son, and thank you for his service and yours as well, everybody up there. But the point is, don't fret. The program exists in Florida. There are people out there working every day to make it better, and I'm proud to say that I'm one of them. There is going to be a very excellent session in Venice on September 18th called the Silver Tour that will be an entire afternoon focus on medical cannabis in the state of Florida. I'm honored to be speaking there. It's put on by Trulieve, one of the medical dispensary companies, and it's a statewide tour that focuses on seniors and medical cannabis, just out of interest. Average age of my patients.
We're going to have to charge you for ad space
55 years
here.
old,
Yeah.
So it's not a young person's
Yeah.
game.
All right, thank you.
for doing this tonight.
You're
Very
welcome.
important.
All right, next. Next question.
Hi.
Hey.
My name is Joanne. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Joanne Mills. I'm here for my husband, Peter McRoberts, who committed suicide. He was Vietnam era, and he was serving in El Centro, California, was given drugs by the United States Navy because he was on watch, and it helped him stay awake. But he also would smoke marijuana to alleviate his anxiety, young kid. The bottom line is this: it's been 40 years. Fast forward, he killed himself. He was 28 years old. I was 25. Our daughter was 22 months old. I'm still struggling with upgrading his discharge. And because somebody testified against him and said he either sold or gave him $10 worth of grass, there went his life when he was discharged administratively, it was a death sentence. I was just a kid. I was 19 years old. I had no idea what was going on with him. And I have Freedom of Information Act. I have all documents for the past 40 years. And I'm here because I would like to ask for help. Maybe somebody knows somebody that could help me upgrade his discharge at this point. It's not for me, it's for my husband, Peter McRoberts. Our daughter now is 41, and we have 3 grandchildren. He will never know. So if anybody knows somebody that can help me with this discharge after 40 years, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
You can talk to Billy afterwards.
Okay,
about
thank
that.
you, Billy.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Next. Good evening.
Thanks for your time today and explaining what's your journey within the cannabis industry and the challenges that you faced throughout the years. I am a recent transplant to Sarasota from Chicago, Illinois, and as I think about the elements of our medical cannabis program within that state, we've been able to quantify the impact of medical cannabis on opioid use. And although it wasn't directly addressed within your comments today, I do think, with over 300 million prescriptions that for calendar year 2016 of this specific medication, it is a very, it is a measurable way to quantify the impact of the program on the state. And as I think about the size of the program, about 140,000 patients, you would probably know better than I would, but about 40,000 in Illinois, when our study indicated that 68% of medical cannabis patients in Illinois stopped using opioids entirely, 23% titrated down. So I'd like to open it up to the panel to understand if there's any movement to quantify the impact of the program thus far. I do have to say I completely agree with you that to have such derivatives of the cannabis plant available yet not the actual plant is not fully serving the residents of Florida. And because I am now one of them, I'm very interested in how we can move that forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody know of any research to that end in Florida, or the impact of Florida's program on opioid?
It doesn't exist. The Florida
Yeah.
program isn't passed. So that research does not exist in Florida, unfortunately.
There is no official research. The only thing I can tell you is from personal experience. We have approximately 500 clients a month that purchase CBD products. Of them, I know of at least, and I'm going to be very modest because I don't want to overshoot, but I'm going to say about 10% use it in order to reduce the detoxifying effects of oxy. So when they decide to try and get off oxy, and we have several good examples, high dosage of the CBD has helped them with their anxiety, shakes, needle pains that come, all the joint pains that come with oxy, coming off oxy. I don't know if anybody experienced it. I have detoxed personally people in the past. It is a horrible experience. And officially, there is no research in Florida. I happen to know that firsthand, and it's going to have to start sooner or later.
Very good point. Thanks for bringing it up. Yes, next.
Hi, my name is Richard. My friends call me Dr. Quack. When my wife had cancer, I used CBD extensively to reduce the nausea effect, which it worked. So seeing that, I did a lot of other research on CBD. And the problem is, in the state, as you have heard, the real enemy may not have been in Afghanistan, Iraq, it's the drug companies. They won't allow effective research on marijuana. That's number one. That's why it's being done in England and in Israel very effectively. CBD, the chemical structure of CBD is exactly the same as in marijuana. So as Jordan can tell you, by taking CBD, you can use that product to overcome a lot of the traditional aches and pains and PSD that people have. The other aspect is now we're in the election season. So I don't know how effective it is. You have to get your politicians to allow the drug companies to start research on marijuana and more research on CBD in the United States. That's extremely important. So now is the time, and an effective time, to get to your politicians and have them pass the word on. even though the drug companies have tremendous lobbies in Washington, you've got to be able to overcome it with these type of stories that we're relating to today. CBD will be manufactured very cost effectively, as I can see it, for less than a penny a milligram. And Jordan knows it's going to be less than the price of a piece of candy. And if it can work as effectively as the studies show, effective medical studies and clinical research, it can help a lot of people. And you don't really have to depend on marijuana to do the same thing, which is specifically illegal and very expensive. So
All right.
that's my story.
Good. Thank you much. Next.
I want to make, can I say something?
Yeah,
Just regarding comparing research, for instance, in Israel, like here, if you get a medical card, okay, it's not a cheap way because basically it's out of pocket. No insurance company is going to cover you. So a small vial of THC legally obtained in the state of Florida is not a cheap treat, I'll tell you that. In Israel, if you are okay to get treatment by THC, it's free. Because there is no cost to it. It's a weed. So the government decided there, okay, we will control it, but we won't charge for it.
Okay. Bob, real quick, if you would.
Yeah, I just want to say that I went to the county commissioner. I would, if you're interested enough to be here tonight, you should call or visit your county commissioners. And Manatee County was the head, the lead overdose in the country. And I went to the county commissioners, and of course they didn't want to hear what I had to say too much. But what happened was, if you give somebody methadone, okay, and instead of heroin, they're trying to go heroin, why not use cannabis? And a lot of resistance, but you know, I'm old hippie, I guess, power to the people. If enough of you stand up, they will pay attention.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, first of all, I just want to thank you for a fascinating hour, and this room should be packed because this was a lot of important information. I have a quick comment and then a question. My quick comment is some of the drugs that you were mentioning, they put my father on when he had Parkinson's and he was in a nursing home. He was catatonic. He couldn't even say a word. So much for that. Two questions. One question is, both my parents had brain diseases, and I understand now there's some research that medical marijuana may be effective in preventing. So I'd like some comments on that. And my other question is, since CBD is legal now in all of the states in the United States, why isn't...
Except 2 counties in Alabama.
Naturally. Anyway... And also, a couple of things too. There was going to be something important from Israel on marijuana that was supposed to come into the United States that our wonderful president just canceled because now he's on a rampage against marijuana. But my question is CBD not being used in the VA hospitals, and if not, why not?
Okay. CBD in VA hospitals? Do we know?
I don't have enough data.
No, the VA is not prescribing any CBDs. And your comment about the neuroprotectant, our government holds a patent on cannabis as a neuroprotectant. Yes. So that's your answer. Yes, it does help. Oh, yes. Right. You can, our bodies, we have our endocannabinoid system all throughout our body and our brain, in our DNA, just waiting to receive the endocannabinoids from the cannabis plant.
Well, I'm visiting Rocket Man tonight. I just checked him on the website. He's open till 9 o'clock or something.
All right, good, thanks. We got 5 minutes, so if we could just accelerate a little bit, that'd be great. So we can get everybody.
Thank you all for your bravery. Oh. I'm a psychoanalyst. I've seen 45,000 hours of patients. I've had one suicide. It was a Vietnam vet. I'm a conscientious objector. I apologize for the treatment you got. This has to work. I've seen abuses in medication since 1969 in inpatient psychiatry, and I'm totally behind this. Okay, I see vets now that are suffering from PTSD, and I had a patient who had severe electrocution in a swimming pool. She was in pain for years. I sent her to, I'll mention the name, the Canine Corral, where they sell CBD oil. She took it. She's completely pain-free for the first time in 3 years. Every day. Every day. So,
All right.
power
Thank you
to
very much
people.
for
Okay.
your heartfelt comments. Thank you. All right, Billy, wrap it up.
Hello, my name is Bill Manning. I'm a 37-year veteran of firefighting and paramedicine. I'm just here to tell you that I know for a fact that marijuana helps because I found out accidentally when my daughters brought some brownies for someone else and I ate them. I ate one, half of one. And I knew something was up when she snatched it out of my hand and said, "No, Dad, don't eat that." But I slept at night for the first time deeply that I could remember for years. And I'm telling you this, I have to use opiates to survive. I have a L5-S1 fracture caused by a drunk driver in Sarasota on my way to the hospital with a patient in the back. So I know for a fact that marijuana, THC, CDBs will reduce opiate use. I've titrated mine down to half of what I was before I started using it. I have my card. I get it legally, but I can tell you this, I found out illegally and accidentally, and I'll never go back. And I believe in it so much that I've actually started a company to produce it. And I'm licensed in Jamaica, and I'll be licensed in America soon. But I'm telling you, it's real, it works, and it helps with PTSD because you can only see so many things before you can't survive anymore. I know from experience. I've had a gun to the side of my head, and I've stopped in front of a semi-truck thinking about pulling in front of it just to make it stop. So don't ever give up on someone. Always be there to talk to them, and it does work, and it does help. And I thank you very much. I thank the panel for being here. I thank the Sarasota Herald for being so gracious as to allow him to do all this work. It was a lot of time and a lot of money, and I thank you, Mr. Cox. I read your articles all the time, and I appreciate the Sarasota Herald and all you've done for the community. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, everybody, if you didn't get your question asked, I'm sure that these folks would stick around for a couple more minutes and answer them, but we do like to make sure that we finish on time. Special shout out to, I call him Billy Manning still, because we went to the Palmetto Boys Club together in Palmetto High School, and I'm glad you're here, Billy. Thank you to the Sarasota Orchestra again, METV, all our panelists. Y'all were terrific and heartfelt, and that's not easy to do in public. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. It's meaningful, I know, for Billy and I to know that the fruits of our labor end up being viewed by people. So thank you again. Check out the, Charles, tell me again, METV Web, metvweb.com. It should be up tomorrow, so you can view this, and please share it. Thanks to the veterans in the room and the people who've worked so hard. Have a good night. God bless.